Hello, this is Tiresmoke Podcast. I'm your host, Will O'Mara. This episode, we're going to be discussing free manufacturers and their unofficial competition towards a vaunted milestone. To explain this whole story, I'll have to start with what this milestone is. It's making a production car, 25 cars made at least, that can reach 300 miles an hour. It's not an easy task. At those kinds of speeds, it isn't about how much horsepower the car has. It's about how aerodynamic the car is. The air at that speed will seem as thick and as dense as tar. Another challenge is being able to keep that car drivable. It can't just be fast in a straight line. It must also corner well. It has to be safe if you crash it. It has to be comfortable. It has to be luxurious because it's going to cost over $1 million. It can't be equipped like a Romanian dungeon. Now, with that established, let's move on to the manufacturers that are the story of this episode. The first manufacturer we're going to be talking about is a company called Bugatti. Bugatti has taken many forms over the years, but it started in 1909 in Mulsanne, Alsace, which, by the way, was German at the time. When a young man named Ettore Bugatti decided, after having designed cars for other people, to make his own company. When it started, he decided that he was going to make fast racing cars. He made a couple of Grand Prix cars, as well as a street legal model of one of the Grand Prix cars. And he engineered the Peugeot Bebe, the first car Peugeot made that was a commercial success. He would keep making racing cars after World War I, even though at the time his company headquarters and factory had become French. It wasn't that he moved them, it's that his the whole region he was in had literally transitioned countries. One of these cars that he made afterwards was the Type 35. It became legendary. It was the most successful race car the world had ever seen. It racked up an astounding 2,000 victories in just 10 years. That's a lot. They also tried making luxury cars, but then the Great Depression hit. Eventually, Bugatti did make a successful luxury car, the opulent Type 57. They also built a high-speed train for this rail line, but that didn't really go to be like a success. In 1936, a strike happened that made Ettore leave the Mulsanne factory to work entirely in Paris. And 4 years later, of course, Nazi Germany invaded France and conquered it. At the end of World War II, Bugatti barely existed. It officially shut down in 1956, but the moment the German soldiers captured Paris, it was over. 1963, the rights to Bugatti were bought by Hispano-Suiza, and almost a quarter of a century later, a man named Romano Artoli bought the rights to Bugatti and made it an Italian company. In 1991, Artoli Bugatti unveiled the EB 110. It was a tribute to Ettore. It was, after all, 1991 was a 110-year anniversary of Ettore's birth. It was a very innovative car. It had a permanent four-wheel drive, a quad-turbocharged V12, most importantly, fully carbon fiber chassis, making it extremely light. However, there was a recession at the time the EB110 came out, and the high price tag proved its downfall. Soon the company did go bankrupt, although they made a EB110 Super Sport. This model could reach 195 miles an hour. It was extremely fast. Then, in 2001, Volkswagen decided that they were going to make a car, alright? And they purchased Bugatti, and, well, they started developing what they said would be a 1,001 horsepower hypercar. The production was going to be rightfully placed in Alsace. They were going to refurbish the very building that Bugatti bought in 1909 to start the company. Now, there was a lot of doubts about this car before it came out. After all, it was supposed to have more horsepower than any other road legal car ever at the time. There also were some problems in the production as well. To get the horsepower they needed, VW had to link two V8 engines to form a W16. First prototype officially made 1,007 horsepower, but if you count like excess heat that came out the back as horsepower, would have made 3,000. Now that power melted the engine and nearly burned down the whole building. The next prototype was tested with a second engine, which was basically the same. When it reached 200 miles an hour, there were flames shooting out the back at lengths of 6 feet. That definitely wasn't going to be allowed on the road, so they had to add more radiators. 10. In fact, that's right. They needed 10 radiators. 3 for the engine, 1 for the heat exchanger for the air to liquid intercoolers, 2 just for the air conditioning, 1 for the transmission oil, 1 for the differential oil, 1 for the engine oil, and 1 for the air brake hydraulic fluid, which will be discussed. The car had one of the first dual clutch transmissions and also some very strong brakes. Standard brakes on this car were carbon ceramic that could withstand up to 1,800 degrees of heat. That wasn't enough for them. No, that just wasn't enough. This is where the air brakes come. The air brake is a hidden spoiler in the wing that automatically raises when braking from speeds of 135 miles an hour. This brake, it's as the spoiler, it provides drag and slows down the car, kind of like a parachute for a dragster. Also is almost as strong as all the brakes of a normal car combined. Construction itself is a massive engineering feat. The components for the body are made by an aerospace company. The front of the car is aerospace-grade steel, the same kind you'd find in a space shuttle. To give you an idea of how complicated the design is, the gas tank alone has 250 separate components. Yeah. All of the parts are made by hand, not by machine, by hand in Germany, and then shipped to France. The tires made for it are special Michelins that work both on normal roads and on racetracks. Full set of them cost about $17,000, or more than the price of a new Mitsubishi Mirage. Just the tires. And these are the advanced tires, because the first tires, when braking, they would just melt. When the car was fully assembled in France, the front and back parts were held together by just 14 bolts. Extremely luxurious and comfortable interior. It came with something called a high-speed key. Normally, the car has a limiter and the air brake to limit the top speed. Once the key is put into the right slot and the door sill and turned, well, the limiter goes away and the air brake stays down permanently until you're braking, of course. So, it was going to be called the Veyron, named after a famous French racing driver that worked with Bugatti to develop the racing cars back in the 30s. So the Veyron finally entered production in 2005. So what happens when you combine Volkswagen's best engineers, brilliant engineering, $1 million price tag, and an engine which is 2 V8s mixed together? Well, let's see. 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds, a top speed of 254 miles an hour, and several broken records. It was the world's fastest production car at the time of release. James May, noted car journalist, called it our Concorde moment. Gordon Murray, the designer of the extremely legendary McLaren F1, even though he initially said that the Veyron would be a pointless exercise, claimed after driving one that it was a huge achievement. Afterwards, Bugatti made a convertible variant and a super sport model that could reach 268 miles an hour because it had because its horsepower was increased to 1200. This took the records of the fastest production car, however, because the original Veyron lost that like a few years prior to the SCC Aero. Eventually, production ended in 2015 at around 450 units total, counting all variants and all the very special hand one-off models for like every Egyptian oil sheik. Now, they would put a replacement model in production a year later called the Chiron. It seems just like a facelift at first, but it's much more than that. It has the same engine, but it's tuned to make 1,500 horsepower. It's more luxurious, it's quicker, top speed is electronically limited 261 miles an hour for safety reasons. Bugatti has claimed it can reach 288, but I'll take that at face value for now. Just recently, Bugatti unveiled a concept car called the Divo, which they actually built 40 of. The Divo's a bit slower than the Chiron, but it handles very well. In my opinion, actually, the Divo is a bit pointless because they only made 40 of them. But every owner of the Divo also owns a Chiron. So what's the point, you have to ask? And just when I was writing this, they made a one-off for the Geneva Auto Convention called the La Voiture Noire to celebrate the 110th anniversary of the founding of Bugatti. What is it with these people and the 110th anniversary? It is the most expensive new car ever made. It was sold at $19 million, and it's only going to rise in value. So that's Bugatti. Company turned from 20s Grand Prix cars to modern-day posters on kids' walls. Next company I want to talk about is Koenigsegg. Unlike Bugatti, with a long history of car making in elegant France, this company was founded by Christian von Koenigsegg in Sweden in 1992. Humble beginnings indeed. First prototype, the CC, came 2 years later. It had a 4.2-liter V8 sourced from Audi and had many innovative features. The most important ones were the detachable roof that could be stored easily and the dihedral door mechanism that allowed the doors to open forward, similar to butterfly doors. But these could reach a vertical angle. These features would be seen in later Koenigsegg. The CC wasn't produced because they couldn't make a deal with Audi to get more V8 engines. After moving their factory in 1998, they would take a production prototype, the CC8S, to the Paris Auto Show in 2000. The V8 engine was this time it was sourced from Ford. However, it was heavily modified to make it both emissions compliant and powerful. It had 655 horsepower and showed the whole world the detachable roof and the dihedral door motions that made the company so recognizable. They built 6 of these, making it Koenigsegg's first real car. In 2004, just 1 year after the Koenigsegg factory caught fire and nearly was destroyed, they created the CCR. On the surface, it looked the exact same as the CC8S. It had all the features. It was just a little bit wider. It also was with a Ford V8, I do believe. However, it was much different. The engine had been pushed up to 806 horsepower. The car could do 0 to 60 in 3.2 seconds and would reach a top speed of the 242, stealing that from the almost decade-old McLaren F1 at the time, and it only was taken the year later by, you guessed it, the Veyron. It had no unnecessary gadgets or features. Everything was designed to make it a pure driving experience. Later, Koenigsegg made the CCX. It was entirely new. and it was entirely Koenigsegg. The V8 wasn't from Ford either. Koenigsegg made their own V8. It was compatible with global safety and global emission laws. Very hard to do, especially when you are a company very small. The new engine in the CCX made it blistering 806 horsepower. Now that was the same as the original, but this wasn't like a Ford-based one. This was Koenigsegg's unique engine. Top Gear, renowned TV show, tested the CCX around their track. It did it in 1 minute 17.6 seconds, making it the fastest around the test track at the time. 2007, they made the CCXR. It was special because it was designed to be environmentally friendly. It could run on normal fuel, but you could run it on ethanol 85 as well. It's also recommended to do because that boosted the horsepower to 1,018 after a couple of special editions. Getting a little bit of a vibe here. These like companies making weird special editions for their cars. Koenigsegg made the Agera in 2010. The Agera means to take action in Swedish, and the engineers definitely took a lot of action with this. All of the interior symbols are etched with tiny lasers into aluminium, and also has special wheels to act as air turbines. I'm not sure how that works, but it works. Don't think performance was forgotten, because it makes 960 horsepower and do 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. Of course, the biofuel version came later, the Agera R. Because of the biofuel engineering, it made a 1,140 horsepower. It could do 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds. Around then, around that time, manufacturers of supercars learned that going green may have some benefits. After all, this tiny little company in Sweden that was just making these V8 biofuel cars, and these V8 biofuel cars were outperforming and outrunning the twin turbocharged V12s from Germany and Italy. A version for people in countries that didn't have the same access to biofuel was created. This version was called the Agera S. It seems weird in a way, though, actually. It's a version for people in countries that don't have access to ethanol fuel, but still have millions and millions of dollars to blow on the Agera R. Well, this Agera was no joke. It was the first gas-powered Koenigsegg to make over 1,000 horsepower, topping off at 1,040. This is where it gets good. 2014, Koenigsegg created the 1-1. This had moved beyond supercar status. It was even beyond hypercar status. This was a mega car. The reason it's called the 1-1 is due to a ratio for weight to horsepower. No road legal car has ever really had a 1-to-1 power per weight ratio measured in kilograms. It's always seemed a bit of a thought experiment, like a theoretical engineering thing. Should be impossible. Yet the 1-1 weighed 1,360 kilograms and made 1,360 horsepower. That is 1 horsepower per kilogram. That makes the car accelerate like a demon. And that's not just 0 to 60. That's like 60 to 100 and 100 to 200 and 200 to 250. It's very fast. No road legal car had ever had that kind of stuff as well. It was an astonishing technical marvel. A year later, Koenigsegg released this luxury hypercar called the Regera, which means to rule. Not only was it their first like luxury-orientated car, it was their first hybrid. It had a few electric motors as well as a normal gas engine. Combined together, it makes about 1,500 horsepower, rivaling the aforementioned Chiron. The car had many innovative features, such as a system that allows the electric motors to entirely drive the car up to 30 kilometers an hour, where the engine kicks in. Koenigsegg touts that around, but that kind of technology has been seen before in the Prius, so... Well, the Prius isn't worth a few $1,000,000, and it doesn't make 1,500 horsepower, so I'll let that slide for now. The Regera has something called Auto Skin, which fully automates the car body closures, as the website says, and it only adds 5 kilograms of weight to the car. I'm really not sure what to say about that, but I guess it just like closes the door cracks and everything. That same year, 2015, the Agera RS came. It started at $2,500,000. That's right, $2,500,000. It was a more road drivable version of the 1.1. I mean, you could drive the 1.1, but every time you hit a pothole in that thing, your spine would shatter in half. The engine makes 11,000. No, sorry, not 11,000. Misread. 1,160 horsepower, and with even all the amazing technology in the car, it's the lightest of the Agera range. Now, I went onto the website to check out the features while I was reviewing the video, and at the top of the features list were dual airbags. Now, that's not a selling point, Koenigsegg. Every car has dual airbags. If your car doesn't have dual airbags nowadays, even back in 2000, that's illegal. Well, whatever. I'll stop making fun of it, because right now it's the fastest car in the world. Its current speed is 278 miles an hour. Now, just like a month or two ago, they unveiled the replacement to the RS, the Jesko. It was named after the father of Christian von Koenigsegg. It costs $2.8 million, and it will allegedly make 1,600 horsepower when running on ethanol. Most importantly, Koenigsegg says the Jesko will reach the vaunted 300 miles an hour. More details will come over the next months, but I can tell you, the whole car world is watching. Now we move on to the final company of note, Hennessy. Hennessy is a Texan tuning company that modifies cars. Now, throughout most of their production, you go to Hennessy, and you can still do this. You go to Hennessy to take your Corvette there and say, "Oh hey, can you here's $100,000, make my Corvette 2 billion horsepower or whatever," and it has flames shooting out the back, and they could probably do that. And yes, it's named Hennessy. I would have made a lot of alcohol jokes here, but there really isn't too much to say besides their most important design that's coming, the F5. It's this exclusive hypercar that can apparently reach 300 miles an hour. Now, the problem is that they said that they're going to keep it at 24 units, which is just one below making it into the production thing. Now, I assume that they really don't care about having the record, because my opinion is that those cars are barely road legal anyways. But it doesn't matter. There will be rich people out there with enough money to spend to purchase cars like these. So back to the whole concept, the whole race to 300. Who's going to win this? But you have these cars, alright? You have many cars out there that are reaching faster and faster speeds. But these are the free cars, and they couldn't be any more different. A luxurious, renowned, prestigious French company with the financial backing of Volkswagen Group. A Swedish startup with enough designers and enough skill to be able to make cars and ethanol vehicles that can best even some of Ferraris. Just kidding. They can best every Ferrari out there. And a Texan tuning company where you can probably bring in like a crate of like Lager, and you can they'll probably do your car up for free. Yeah, I said I wouldn't make an alcohol joke. Who cares? Well, that's all I have for now. This is Will O'Mara. I am signing off. Have a lovely day, and I'll see you later.